Step into the spectrum where the quiet learn to speak. Where cowards lose their cover and the bold become unique. Black pages birth the light. Every pigment takes its role. If you came here once unseen, this art will make you whole. Welcome to the canvas where excuses come to die. Where ink comes down to timid and colors testify. No shelter in the palette, broken edges forge you whole. This is conversations in color and I am unfold the soul. Yeah. And I am unfold the soul.
Welcome to Conversations in Color with Unfold the Soul. My name is Ken Williams. I am an artish. I'm an artish because I don't know shit about art, but I make a bunch of it. On the wall is my hand-drawn art. I want to welcome new watchers to the show, and I want to welcome back anyone who has been here for the first few episodes. The show's pretty simple. I'm going to take a walk to the wall and pull a piece of art. I'm going to put it right here, and then we're going to chop it up. All right? Let's see what the wall wants to talk about today. This piece is entitled, Leadership is Governed by Natural Law. And I'll tell you up front, something that I think is pretty unique about my work is I don't consult research. I may start with research, but I'm going to go to nature for all my answers, because what I've discovered is there is a natural order to things. If we just leave things and we're left to our own devices and things just roll out, there's an activation, a natural activation for everything we want to accomplish as human beings. We, to expedite things, come up with protocols and structures and practices and strategies, but there's a natural order to things. And leadership is one of those areas. You know, I am fascinated by AI. I'm fascinated by Amazon.com. I'm clicking a button. It's right here. I'm fascinated by all of it. Social media, the way we're able to keep in touch these days. But I want you to notice this. It doesn't matter how advanced our society gets. We still study leaders from 5 years ago, 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago. And that's because there are leadership principles that never change. Leadership is not born of man. Man did not create leadership. Leadership was gifted to us by the gods. Leadership is divine. That's why we go back and study people from thousands of years ago, because the same principles apply. And I'll tell you, I was fooled for a while inside what I call like the educational plantation, which I've escaped. I'm trying to get you to escape it as well, where I would rationalize things that didn't make sense in terms of leadership. Just things that I studied, just had come across in the real world, it just didn't make sense. And I would rationalize it by saying, oh, but our clientele is different. Oh, but we're dealing with kids and all those things. But that's not how leadership works. And the more I discovered about leadership, the more I felt this almost angry urge to protect it. But what I understand now is this: leadership doesn't need my protection. Leadership protects itself. Because when things feel unnatural, it lets you know this is not in alignment. Come with me for a second on let's say it's a leadership field trip. We're going to go to a company. And the company's leader's there. And we're being taken around by another leader of a department, a specific department. And I want you to imagine this leader turning around to us and saying, my employees they just aren't very good. They're just not they're not very effective. They're not very good. You would not need a PDF or an online course or a research reference to know right away the absurdity of that comment. Your first thought might be, well, shit, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? Because by natural law, you know that his employees are a direct reflection of him. In fact, a scenario like that would likely never happen in real life on a real leadership field trip. But think of a sitcom, like a half-hour sitcom on television, maybe a parody around an office. Who knows? That scene we could get away with, and it might get laughs. Do you know why? Because of the absurdity of it. The show wouldn't work if all 30 leaders inside this corporation operated that way. But when one does it, or a couple do it, it stands out as absurd. And the absurdity is rooted in their complete detachment from reality. That's why it's funny. That's why it's funny. Because it's a complete detachment from reality, a complete detachment from natural law. So again, on a sitcom, you watch The Office. I'm a fan of The Office. Michael Scott makes a ridiculous statement. You know right away, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. Because you know better naturally. Now, when one or two people are doing it, it stands out. But what happens when everyone in the entire profession is doing it? And it feels right. None of this is personal. What this is about is the fact that leaders in education have been given the wrong assignment. And that wrong assignment has caused you to abandon the right work. Here are a couple of it doesn't matter who you study in history. Leaders always focus wholly and solely on what they can control. And our entire profession tries to evaluate itself on factors it cannot control. Which school serves the Mexican learner best? It's ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous. The challenge is, present company included for a while, we get dressed up, we go to work, passion and fever. But what happens is when good people become leaders and are given an impossible task, literally impossible, not we could do it impossible, not none of that shit. I'm talking about literally an impossible task, which is to ensure learning. I've done thousands of events. I've never had a school leader, I've never had a district leader pull me aside and say, now, do you believe all our principals learn at high levels? And are you going to ensure? No, I'm going to ensure you're going to get my best instruction today. So what happens is that example I gave you about corporate sounds obvious and ridiculous in the real world. But in our world, when I tell you, superintendents and principals talk about lack of teacher capacity like they have nothing to do with teacher expertise. Nothing. I was at a leadership retreat last week. And one way I can get principals to just panic right away almost is to say, your teachers need to be unleashed as self-directed content experts. Because that's all they've got is their strongest instruction. And the immediate, I would say 95% of the time, the immediate pushback from a principal is, but what if they don't have capacity, Ken? They don't have capacity. And I had a guy stand up, brand new assistant principal, stood up. He said, I got one for you. What if they're really terrible teachers? And I'm thinking, you have no clue what you're saying to me right now because you are completely detached from reality. The idea that your gains can be summed up in race and culture and labels and trying to make that predictable, it shows all over you. See, you're fighting that because you've been given this assignment and you come in and you do it with passion, but your nature knows better. That's why you talk about demographics. It's the only reason you talk about demographics. A college or university doesn't talk about demographics. My friend, my great friend, and I'm name dropping, Dr. Reginald Desroches is the president of Rice University. And we grew up together, and I'm so proud of him. Hey, I don't monitor every one of his posts, but in passing glances on LinkedIn, he is constantly talking about the credentials of his teachers. Credentials. Yes, he works in a student every once in a while. Credentials. When I think of Rice, all I think about is what all those teachers get to do. And that's what schools are supposed to be based on. And your nature's going to tell you that. Had an awesome principal mentee reach out to me the other day. And I could hear her voice. We made some gains. That's about as excited as a principal can get. You know why? Because you're trying to sum up your gains as more Mexicans made it this year. More of our Latino boys succeeded. Our black numbers are better. Our special Edwards are doing better. But you can't control any of that. That's why you can only go, we made some gains. Because you're trying to attach evaluation to factors you literally cannot control. Do you know what that does to you? When you wake up, get dressed, and you come in with passion, chasing a mission that is literally not possible, you become an instant victim. I look forward to August. I do lots of convocations, and I love them these days because I wake them up. Because if left to your own devices, because you're doing something impossible, 95% of convocations I watch, uninterrupted, effervescent victimhood, because all you can talk about is what you're up against. And leaders, no leader talks about what they're up against. But you're trying to do something impossible. So leaders only focus on what they can control. And leaders celebrate what they can control. So my leadership mentee, I emailed her back right away and said, Shannon, I want you to make a list of 6 things that you help teachers do to get better as content experts. Anybody on staff. That's what I want to hear about. A couple of days later, I got a whole list. These teachers has to go to this conference. I found this training for these teachers. And it was for their expertise, not fixing kids. These teachers wanted to get better at this. This 4th grade teacher wanted to attend this mathematics, all these things. I said, these are your gains. This is what you celebrate. Your so-called percentages jump a little bit and you get in front of your staff and say, we did it. It's all tenuous and you know it. That's why you can't do it with fervor. That's why no one posts about that stuff. All you post about is stuff that impacts and intentionality. And that's because you've been given an assignment that is not real. It's not real. And the fact that we're all doing it doesn't make it any more real. You literally cannot. You can't measure those things. And so what I helped her see, how I attempted to serve her, is to understand that building your teacher and staff credentials are your gains. And the challenge I gave her for next year, because then she remembered 3 more and then hit me with another one. I see, Shannon, it's all popping now. It's all popping. And now going into next year, you're going to make sure every staff member has some way, shape, or form that you grew their credentials. And then the so-called data just shows the impact of your teacher's strongest instruction. Leadership is governed by natural law. And that's why leadership feels really weird in education, because it is weird. Because leadership has us chasing a mission that is impossible. And as a result, your school bears no resemblance to the leaders inside it. 99% of principals, I say, tell me about your school. You're going to talk about all the things you cannot control right away. That's not bad leadership. That is not leadership. That's not leadership. Credentials. We cannot measure who teaches blacks best. You know, new ones showing up next year, right? And the result isn't so much harm to kids, man. The result is good people become leaders and do really terrible things to teachers. Teachers are the one that suffer. I mean, look, we're in a profession with 90 days off, 60 in a row, and we got a shortage. This ain't exactly deadliest catch. Teachers are invisible because leaders are trying to track demographics. And so what happens is another tenet of leadership is you have to need the people you lead. That's why principals talk about teachers like they're annoying middle schoolers who escape the trip chaperone. And superintendents talk about principals the same way. Superintendents describe their principals by the condition of their school, all the factors they cannot control. And since you're trying to chase something impossible, no, your teachers don't have capacity to do that. So then leaders turn around and do terrible things to teachers unintentionally. Terrible things. Let me give you one example. This piece is called The Background Alibi. And on one side of the piece, I have what leaders say to teachers. And on the other side, the unspoken message to teachers. So, see, I was trying to do this without my glasses because I thought I'd look cuter without them, but I can't even read my art. So on this side, here's what leaders say. Poverty, language, Mexican, mobility, trauma, zip code. Our kids come from difficult backgrounds, bless their hearts. What their background got to do with a teacher delivering their strongest instruction? The unspoken message to teachers. The unspoken message to teachers. Their background explains our results. Not your instruction, not my leadership. Nothing to see here, just keep helping and hoping. I'm telling you, I now know why teachers, like one of my colleagues, Tina Bugrin, that the whole self-care movement, I get it now. Because unintentionally, leaders, it's mental cruelty to hire a teacher for her expertise and then bludgeon them with everything they cannot control. And then try to fix them in the context of what they cannot control. It's mental cruelty. It's abusive. And it has to stop. And the only way for it to stop is for you to understand what real leadership is about. You celebrate what you can control. And so, Shannon, you go over that list of teachers got to do that and then call out, who do I not have on this list that did something this year to grow their credentials? Credentials. That's what you celebrate. I notice other college, university leaders. That's what they're celebrating. Leaders celebrate what they can control. Education's got this snow globe, what the stuff we call leadership. This is not leadership, and you know it. You know it. That's why you can never get overly excited about your so-called gains, because you know you don't have any control over them. Zero. And when you make your results about demographics, the natural activation is you don't need your teachers. That's why you treat them like shit. You don't even think about teachers. You talk about teachers like they're a monolith, like they're all one person. You train teachers like they're dumb. I've never seen a room full of experts in 100 different diverse areas all being fed the same hay. Answers to questions they did not ask. And it's all rooted in the fact that you are trying to chase something impossible. One more. Any of you are parents of taking your kids to visit colleges or universities. It doesn't matter what level. It doesn't matter how many stars. It doesn't matter anything. You're not going there asking about demographics. You want to know about faculty and facility. Faculty. Schools are no different. I'm convinced it's the only reason we have a shortage is because people from the outside can see teachers are invisible. They work 180 days and then leaders get to flush their results right down the toilet if you got enough Mexicans around. Or whatever your chosen demographics are. And it's because you are chasing something literally impossible. I'm going to finish with this, but I'm going to revisit this in future episodes. Schools should be known for the power of their faculty, not the plight of their families. But nature, natural law. We go back to the original piece about natural law. When you wake up and chase an impossible mission, you instantly become a victim. And most of you are effervescent victims. We appreciate our teachers, all we're up against, our challenges, the grit. You're always talking about what you're up against. I remember doing this at a convocation last year in Baltimore. I was like, you got great music going on in here, but all you're talking about is what teachers are up against. And that's because you have them chasing something impossible. But if your job were to make sure that every teacher grew their credentials that year, oh my gosh. And that's all you celebrated? And that's all you talked about? And then you look at data differently, not by race. I'm 58. I'm black. I've been black a long time. I've taught a lot of black kids. I got no idea how black kids learn because I never met two who are alike. I checked with all the other races and they kind of worked out the same way. What I knew intuitively is anything that's going to happen in this classroom is going to be because of what I do to get better as a fourth grade mathematics teacher. To the end of my life, I'm going to give Ken Evans, my first principal, tons of credit. I went in there, man, enthusiastic, excited like put it on him. Me. We looked up, I can't remember if it was after the first semester or the first quarter, but he was looking at some of my literacy data and we didn't have one discussion about demographics at all. No discussion about special ed, IEP, who's slow, who's low. He basically put a 504 on my ass. He went and got, at the time, Jeannie Tropinato, who is now Jeannie Falvo, the reading specialist of our school, gave her a big old piece of Velcro. She attached herself to me and taught me how to be an effective literacy teacher. Our results improved because my principal invested in my expertise. No discussion about kids, because who the kids are don't matter. What I must grant them access to is my strongest instruction, because that's all we got. Let's be done with the cruelty we're doing to teachers. Teachers come in with expertise. They show up with capacity. And because we're trying to improve ELs as if they're all the same person. We put teachers in straitjackets and don't ever ask about their expertise. Natural law. You are so hooked into demographics, you don't think about teacher expertise, ever. All you think about is fixing teachers. This is natural law. And the only way to turn this around is you got to get out of your victimhood. But chasing demographics, I don't care how you thug it out. I don't care what kind of intentionality shit you talk. That's why there are no sides in education. It was funny. It was like, is it red side or blue side? Ain't no sides. Everybody's chasing the same mission of ensuring learning for kids. You can't ensure learning for kids. You can't ensure learning for anyone. All you can do is deliver your strongest instruction. And teachers do that when they're granted access to being experts and they're not burdened with whether Manuel Mama bought the cheese with an EBT card or not. Leadership is governed by natural law. It's the only reason a job like this has a shortage in America. Even slackers from the outside look inside and say, teachers are invisible. Their impact is invisible. Their expertise is invisible. And even slackers want to be seen. Thank you for joining me this week on Conversations in Color with Unfold the Soul. This is the type of work I'm doing these days. I would love to partner with you. There's a link below to do that. Share this episode with someone if it served you in any way. I look forward to the next time we get together. And may the bridges I burn light the way.
And I am unfold the soul.